Well, with the current state of geopolitics, it might be easy to imagine that this particular hypothetical question is already grounded in some kind of reality, albeit misconstrued in subterfuge and alleged shadowy misdirection. But there's no denying that Russia's involvement on the world stage has always played a large part on the influence and ultimate fate of our planet. Russia itself is a nation steeped in an intriguing history, political upheaval, and oftentimes great tragedy. From Vladimir Ilyich Lenin to Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin, all the way up to Mikhail Gorbachev, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics has played an incredibly important role in modern history. But what if somehow through a chain of miraculous events, the USSR reunited? Well, let's find out. Hello internet, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the most inquisitive channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. As per usual, I'll be your disembodied floating voice Jack Finch, as today we curiously ask the question, what if the USSR reunited? Roll the clip.
But if we are not there now, at this crucial hour in our country's history, perhaps even in the history of the world, there will be no revolution.
For the curious amongst you, that clip was from the 1974 miniseries Fall of Eagles, starring the one and only Patrick Stewart as Vladimir Lenin, and it sets the scene neatly for our hypothetical question, because we can't exactly ask the question, what if the USSR reunited, without first addressing how it began. In 1917, the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, abdicated from the throne of the Russian Empire following the devastating aftermath of the February Revolution. Things quickly got a lot worse for him and his royal family though, and following the October Revolution of the Bolsheviks and the subsequent storming of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, the House of Romanov came to its end in 1918 when they were executed by Bolshevik troops whilst in hiding. See, the thing is, a German philosopher named Karl Marx had written a little book in the late 1800s known as Das Kapital, which in part laid the foundations for the socialist movement that proliferated during the Russian Revolution. The Russian people were sick and tired of the autocracy that ruled them, and inevitably it was a house of cards that collapsed. It was headed by this man, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, who through his Soviet workers-based ideology and further political model seized the means of production while also fighting a long and bloody civil war that raged from 1917 all the way to the early 20s, and by December 30th, 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was officially formed, stepping out onto the world stage with a brand new state of mind. There's an old saying though, communism, it sounds great in theory. And through the totalitarian rule of Joseph Stalin, the Marxist ideology that formed the USSR gradually diminished as the influence of the Soviet Union expanded throughout Europe, eventually comprising a vast number of European and Baltic countries. What is now known as Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, all of which fell under the influence of the Soviet Republic. But by November 1991, the whole thing came crashing down, the Berlin Wall fell, and the USSR was officially dissolved. But what if the Soviet Republic made moves to re-establish one of the largest political powers of the 20th century and brought all of these countries back under its sphere of influence as the second ever Union of Soviet Socialist Republics? How would those countries react? Heck, how would the rest of the world react? And could it ever even happen? Well, the biggest glaring issue is that throughout the Soviet era, particularly under Stalinist rule, the majority of Russians and the satellite states of the Baltic countries endured such a miserable and incredibly testing way of life that it would definitely be met with mass uprisings, revolts, and resistance. Stalinist Russia was a totalitarian state, and although the method of order was eventually augmented by further Soviet leaders, it was a violent place ruled with an iron fist of secret police, the Cheka and the Red Terror, and military force was largely the only ruling authority. Gulags, work labor camps, and forced exile, Soviet Russia kept its house in order at the expense of its people. For the proud people of countries like Poland, Latvia, Hungary, Romania, Lithuania, and many other former Soviet satellites, their way of life would likely never return to that of the Soviet era without meeting great resistance. That indicates then that the only option for the USSR to ever reunite would be under a full-scale armed conflict, similar to the one that was consistently threatened during the height of the Cold War, where tensions between the United States and the Soviet Republic were at their highest. The short answer to that, though, would result in the most prolific fear of the Cold War itself, an all-out global nuclear war, and subsequently mutually assured destruction. However, in 2014, the Russian Federation under the rule of Vladimir Putin pretty much did exactly that, with the covert invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent annexation of Crimea. The global political community didn't really bat an eyelid at that fact though, and seemingly Russia managed to re-seize its physical and economic influence over the Crimean Sea with little consequence. See, although the Russian Federation would meet with little success from military expansion, with the ultimate goal to re-establish the USSR, economic and political expansion is a completely different story. Since 2013, both sides of the Western world have warned of a second Cold War already occurring on the international stage. In fact, even former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev warned against the increasing confrontation of Russia and the West back in 2014 when he suggests that a Cold War was already occurring with the expansion of the Russian Federation into the Crimean Sea, albeit with a completely different motive than that of the Soviet Union. The difference is the fact that now Russia is far more integrated with the outside world than it ever was as the Soviet Union, mainly due to fragile economic policy with the East and a wide increase in technology, and that's something that can never truly be unturned. Instead, it's clear that the Russian Federation has instead been disseminating its political influence through staged subterfuge, coups d'etats, and cyber warfare, as is clear with the staged invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea, as well as the Russian interference in the 2016 US elections, the result of which is yet to play out. The real answer is that the USSR, as we know it, would never reunite again. The actual mechanics of re-establishing Soviet influence would be far too damaging for both Russia and the rest of Europe, and the memory and resentment of Soviet life runs far, far too deep. That doesn't discount the fact that the Russian Federation have clearly made moves to expand their influence in former Soviet territory as well as across the Western world. As to what the Russian Federation's true intentions are and whether they align with that of the former Soviet Union, well, that'll be one for the history books. Unfortunately, folks, that's all we've got time for in today's Life's Biggest Questions. Why don't you let us know your thoughts and the way that you see it down in the comment section down below. If you're a fan of this video, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe bell, and we'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your disembodied floating voice, Jack Finch. You've been watching Life's Biggest Questions, and until next time, you take it easy.